Welcome to Combat Sports Talk, a podcast dedicated to UFC and Bellator discussion, the MMA community, and combat sports in general. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and joining me this week, as he does most weeks, is KC Knockout Onyebuchi.
Well, howdy there, Ryan. How's it going out there today?
Well, it's going pretty good. I'm so glad that we're back here in the state of Texas.
Tell you what, it sure is nice, and them fights out there in Austin were a game changer. I was loving it.
All right, then. You know what's funny is that I was in Fort Lauderdale.
A little different.
And people were asking me about my Texas accent. I'm like, well, I don't really have a Texas accent anymore because I do this, and do the public speaking thing. But I could pull it out when I want to, right? Get a little bit of that
phrasing.
That Southeast Texas accent. We talk a little bit slower than most people.
I like it. Get a little drawl in there. Speaking of a drawl,
right?
I don't think I saw a draw. There's mostly finishes, which I like.
Mostly right. I
can't do this the rest of the show. I just got to be honest. The show was the fight card was actually kind of interesting. There was some action both on the Bellator and the UFC side, but I think UFC was probably a little more interesting.
Absolutely. So you know what? The way we always do this is we have to go through the official decision. So let's go ahead and knock that out.
The official decision.
This is the official decision. This is where we look at the key fights from the weekend of action. And so, we used to go through all of the fights in minute detail. If you go back to the earlier
one of them.
Oh my gosh, it was, going back and listening to some of the old shows, I'm like, why did we spend so much time on a fight that does not move the needle in the sport? So we're just going to talk about the fights that move the needle. Are you good with that?
I support it.
All right. I do want to say that James Vick and Sage Northcutt, Texas homeboys of ours, not really, we don't know them, but they're from Texas.
And I refuse to be friends with Sage.
But James Vick, he's dope.
All right.
They both won their fights by unanimous decision. But the key fights on this card has to be Derrick Lewis versus Marcin Tybura. This was a heavyweight fight. The Black Beast was finally coming off of his back injury.
And I think he looked good, though, to me. I mean, there's some areas where I think that we're still seeing issues with these heavyweights just have no idea how to grapple or stand back up when they're taken down.
Well, I mean, and that's
quite
the
a bit
thing.
of that with.
Yeah. I agree with you. Let's just go ahead and, for the people who don't know, Derrick Lewis defeated Marcin Tybura via knockout in the third round. Here's the thing.
I remember.
You finally got to do it. Go ahead.
No, boom, rocked him.
Very nice. Very nice. Here's the thing. I haven't spent a lot of time watching Derrick Lewis fights, but that guy has some great timing. I mean, he just sat there and Marcin Tybura just kicking at him, throwing punches. Then all of a sudden, Derrick Lewis just throws this like bam, bam, and next thing you know, Tybura's on his back fighting for his life, and it just seems like Derrick Lewis has amazing timing when it comes to throwing punches. It's great
timing, but even more so than the timing, I think the accuracy, like just being able to catch the chin and not end up like punching a clavicle or. Which you see a lot, like in those when you're breaking away from the clinch, and you're just trying to throw to get some distance. He was throwing with accuracy to make sure he caught the chin, and he landed spot on.
And for those of you who didn't take anatomy and physiology, a clavicle is a collarbone.
I mean, I probably just know that because I've broken mine playing football.
But in the first round, man, Derrick Lewis, I mean, just ran straight through Marcin Tybura. Threw a big punch, got all the way from landing the punch down into like almost mount position right off the bat. It was crazy.
Yeah, but the second round didn't look quite the same there. I think Tybura figured out a little bit more of what his game plan should be. but just couldn't get a finish there in the second.
Here's the thing that you were alluding to before. Marcin Tybura, like, he's got his back, he's got his legs wrapped around the massive trunk of the Black Beast.
Yep.
The Black Beast has both of his hands. Derrick Lewis has both of his hands on the ground. That means he is not defending his neck. All Marcin Tybura had to do was wrap one arm under his chin, bring the other arm back, and you're in a rear naked choke. And this fight is over in the second round.
Yeah. I mean, well, we also have to account for it. It takes a lot of athleticism to do that. When you're pretty deep into the second round, in a 3-round fight, you've probably spent a lot of your energy in round one, and you're just trying to find the right way to finish it. And when you look at his positioning, Derrick actually did a really good job of posturing up and getting Tybura to be way too forward to stick in that position.
Yeah, so. I agree, but Tybura's had plenty of opportunities. Opportunities.
For sure.
So what ends up happening, the fight goes to the third round. Tybura tries to execute the same strategy from the second round and got a little bit lazy coming off of a clinch on the cage. And that was all she wrote, man.
Got him.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal.
The heavy hands of the Black Beast. Lots of talk that this could be a good matchup for Francis Ngannou. What do you think?
As long as the back holds up, I'd love to see it because this fight ain't gonna last long. One of these guys are gonna land on the chin, and someone's going to sleep. I think it's gonna be it would be a great fight for Ngannou coming off of the championship loss to Stipe Miocic. And Stipe Miocic, he needs to go ahead and fight Fabricio Verdum. So I think you could see a rematch coming by the end of the year if we could get those two fights set up.
Very interesting stuff.
The main event. Do you have more on that?
Nope, I was about to intro the main event too.
All right, the main event of the evening was Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who defeated Yancy Medeiros via TKO in the first round. Cowboy looked good out there.
I hate to admit it, but Bearded Cowboy came with some good stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So here's a question for you: is Bearded Cowboy as effective as No Hair Rose Namajunas?
No. No Hair Rose is still in a league of her own. But Bearded Cerrone, it's not just that he's bearded. I think his approach to training was a little different than it had been in the past. There was a lot of talk that this is the best condition he's ever been in. He's carrying his weight well. He's really focused. His fight camp has gone really well. So he came in there a different man and really frustrated with losing. He's like, I can't be in this good of a shape and lose a fight. So his mentality coming into it was, bar none, probably the best we've seen in a long time. He's re-energized.
So do I need to hit the hype train button and see if I can get you on this hype train for Cowboy?
Oh, no, that's not enough. Like, Cowboy, good work. Like, for real. He put in work.
Oh, man.
But, I just don't like you as a human.
So, for those of you out there, the thing that you have to know is that Yancy Medeiros and Donald Cerrone are good friends. They have a lot of respect for each other. So, for them to get into the ring to fight each other, I was going to build this. When the fight started, Yancy Medeiros, I guess he got knocked down or slipped or something. And
it was a slip.
And Yancy Medeiros stands back up, and Cowboy Cerrone and Medeiros give each other high fives and a hug in the middle of the ring, in the middle of a fight. So I was getting ready to build this as the bro fight of the year until it ended in a TKO, and then it's like, okay, well, maybe it's not a bro fight.
But all right, so you mentioned the TKO here, which of course we have to. But to me, it's first of all great striking by Cowboy, but it was just a lack of awareness in the timing and the situation. Because you see early on in the fight, you've got Medeiros trying really, really hard to get into a tie clinch, and it was that tie clinch at the very end that sealed his fate because he missed the clinch, and that allowed Cowboy to come over the top of Medeiros' left hand and just do work.
So for those of you out there who aren't familiar with the tie clinch, imagine linking your fingers, kind of, whenever you do the this is the church and this is the steeple, that's a good reference, right?
I support it.
Okay, so imagine you linking your hands like that, and then you want to put your hands to the back of your opponent's head, right where that part of the head sticks out. Do you know what that part is called?
The back of the head.
You know what that part of the back of the head is called?
The knot of the back of the head.
It is called the external occipital protuberance. There you go, Mr. Clavicle.
So who went to med school here? You or me?
Well, that's the great thing about having a wife who's a nurse.
Ah, well played.
It was the one thing that I learned in her A&P class when I helped her study. So what you want to do is that big lump in the back of their head, you want to put your hands linked up in the church's the steeple behind their head, and that gives you a lot of control. And what you want to do is you want to take your forearms and you want to lock that on around their head, and that gives you a lot of control to throw knees and all that kind of stuff. And that's called a Muay Thai clinch. And so that's what both of them really were. Both of them are Muay Thai fighters, I believe. And so that's what Yancy Medeiros was trying to do. But you can imagine if you miss that, your hands are down by your waist,
hanging out there.
Yeah. They're not up by your chin where they need to be.
Yeah.
And so he paid for it big time. Now, here's the outcome. Cowboy Cerrone is now tied with Michael Bisping and GSP, George St. Pierre, for the most wins in the UFC at 20, and tied for the most finishes at 14 with Anderson Silva and Vitor Belfort. So here's my question for you. You ready?
Yep.
Has Donald Cerrone established himself as a Hall of Famer in the UFC?
By UFC standards, yes. From a casual fan,
20 wins is significant.
It's significant, but it's a long career. It's had its ebbs and flows, and I think it's more significant the fact that, unlike the other two fighters, he'll be able to build on it and take the number one place, which earns him the spot as a Hall of Famer.
Wow, I did not think you were going to give that to him because he's not a champion. I mean, if you look at everyone on that list, except for Vitor Belfort, they've all been champions.
Yeah. I don't see Cerrone becoming a champion anytime soon, but that doesn't diminish his legacy. But if we're just going on this 20-win thing, I think a lot of people would also harken back to the days of Strikeforce and WEC, at which point Bisping is like head and shoulders above everyone with like 35 wins or some outlandish number like that.
All right. Hey, we'd be remiss if we didn't go out to Mohegan Sun Arena in Uncasville. Remember last time I was calling it Uncasville. It's Uncasville. Uncasville, Connecticut, for Bellator 194. Really, the only fight on that card that I felt like moved the needle was the next fight in the first round of the Heavyweight Grand Prix. That was the main event. Matt Mitrione, who defeated Roy Nelson via majority decision.
Yeah, man, Roy's just having a rough go. Like, I still want to root for him. Like, I absolutely do. But man, his career it's reached its twilight.
Unfortunately, in watching the fight, it really has, because what you saw is, this was a rematch from their 2012 fight. So it's been 6 years since they last fought. And Roy Nelson knocked Matt Mitrione out in like the first round. But now, Matt Mitrione has gotten better on his feet. He can put combos together, and he dominated Roy Nelson. I mean, he had Roy Nelson's eye bloody in the first round. And he continued to do really well on his feet, but Roy Nelson, being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, was able to get the fight to the ground, and in the third round got Matt Mitrione in a crucifix. And so...
that's the thing, is because you've got a fighter in Big Country who is incredibly skilled at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so you'd imagine he'd start to rely on that more.
Well, you would think so, but it takes a lot of energy, and you've seen his physique.
Country's gas tank isn't.
He doesn't have. He's got a farm truck body with a 4-cylinder gas tank.
This has been NASCAR Talk, brought to you by Ryan P. Smith.
All right. I just wanted to put that out there.
That one
we got to put that one on Twitter. That one was a good one. Come on now.
Texas.
Look, hey, he's got a
Tell you
farm
what.
truck body. I tell you what, he's got a farm truck body with a 4-cylinder gas tank.
Now, what you want to do is really get yourself like an F350 body, just a big old body,
dually and diesel.
Oh, man. You got to have that big block engine in there and just really be able to tear it up when you need to and just cruise when you want to.
Okay, I would love to get a F350 dually diesel and just go to like fancy restaurants and make them try to freaking park that thing. but we digress.
I want to hit another note real quick on the Bellator card.
Okay.
Because Twitter's been kind of blowing up on the fact that the Heather Hardy versus Anna, I'm going to butcher her name, so I'll skip it.
Yeah.
Fight was absolute garbage. Just no excitement. These two were booked. You watched that fight?
I did.
What did you think?
Okay, let me just say that I only watched that fight to see if Heather Hardy was going to get bloodied up like she did the last time she fought.
Oh, man, that was so gross. So gross.
I just wanted to see if she was going to get smashed again, and she didn't.
The before and after pictures there are just nasty.
So she didn't. I mean, it wasn't a very exciting fight, but,
yeah,
you know.
I mean, the two were booked for a 2-fight setup. So they've got this MMA fight that they just apparently they fought. And then the next fight they have is a boxing match, which is supposed to be a lot more interesting. But the only intrigue that really comes from this fight is the Bellator weight issue here. So you've got Heather Hardy, who misses weight by 0.2 pounds. So basically what it came down to is she was weighing in, and to make the weight, all she had to do was take off top and bottom, and she would have made weight just right on point. Mm-hmm. Well, the weigh-in official decides that, yeah, there's no need to strip down in front of everyone. We know that the 2 ounces will come from your clothes. You're good to go. Well, that's allegedly what happened. So she walks off relieved, goes back, rehydrates, does interviews, and then she's informed later that she's going to lose out on 20% of her purse because she didn't make weight by those 2 ounces. Well, what that really kicks off is a fight between the weigh-in officials, Bellator, and the fighters, because now you've got Heather Hardy saying that Anna's trying to take food out of her daughter's mouth, and the real question is, why did she walk off so confidently that if she didn't make weight? Well, the weigh-in official comes back later and says that he didn't feel like it was safe for her to lose those 2 ounces, but why didn't he let her take the clothing off like every other fighter is allowed to do? So big mess there. We'll see if that results in any changes in how the weigh-ins are done for Bellator, or if it's just a one-off.
That's good. I hadn't heard about that. So that's yeah, dude.
Every now and again, reporting. I do my research.
Nice. All right. So, anything else from the fights this weekend?
No, that wraps it up for me.
All right. Well, let's get right into since you're already throwing headlines out. Why don't we get right into finding the angles?
Finding the angles.
This is Finding the Angles. This is where we look at the headlines making waves in the wake of the fights this weekend. I have to go back actually 2 weekends because the first one I want to talk about was Yoel Romero on MMA Hour. So you'll go back to when we talked about Yoel Romero knocking out Luke Rockhold in devastating fashion, by the way.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of hype and a lot of people complaining about what happened after the fight. So Luke Rockhold, after taking this brutal uppercut from Yoel Romero, he is clearly not present. I mean, his body is there, but his mind is 3 weeks prior. And so he's just standing there, and Yoel Romero is uncomfortably in his face saying something to him, and then kisses him.
You. Yeah.
I love you. I love you. God is great. I love you. That's basically what he was saying. and then he kisses, Rockhold on the face, but it was just all very uncomfortable, and so people started just really, really getting uncomfortable with what they saw on the screen. You want to talk a little more about that?
It was weird because I don't know. Like, Romero's the kind of guy who he's an affectionate fighter, and then there was a lot of I listened to just about every MMA podcast I can, and everyone was trying to make this a sexual harassment thing against Romero to Luke Rockhold, and it's like that sounds like a bit of a stretch.
Well, that uppercut was one heck of a roofie, man. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it was. I mean, all in. It's strange how the end of a fight gets treated. In some cases, after a knockout, they make sure that the two fighters don't touch, don't just like give the man his space. And in other cases, there's just so much respect. There's bowing and whatnot happening. Like, you just never really know how to handle the end of a fight. And I really don't think that this was Romero trying to be dominant. Like, he's just a super grateful, socially awkward dude.
So, Ariel Helwani. I'm a big fan of Ariel Helwani.
And I'm just not.
Okay. Of the podcasts that I listen to, the MMA Hour, Ariel Helwani's show is the one that I love the most because he always gets the fighters on his show, and he's never afraid to ask the tough question. So, he asked Yoel Romero about this kissing incident, and it's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, so, Yoel Romero and Luke Rockhold have history. These guys have been friends for a while, and they had actually sat down at one time at Yoel Romero's house or somewhere with Yoel, and Luke Rockhold's like, listen, dude, I don't want to fight you. And Yoel Romero's like, hey, man, I don't want to fight you either. And he thought that was done, right? Like, we're friends. That's my boy. We're not going to ever fight each other. Well, then Yoel Romero got popped by USADA, the U.S. anti-doping agency, right?
Yep.
Well, as you know, Michael Bisping gets on the horn and starts bad-mouthing Yoel Romero.
And still does.
But guess who else got on the mic and started bad-mouthing Yoel Romero? Luke Rockhold. So Yoel Romero feels betrayed, and he's like, listen, we were supposed to be friends. I thought that we weren't gonna, that we were never gonna fight each other, but then you start talking bad about me, so now I want to fight you. Okay? So
makes sense to me. I mean,
so he gets this opportunity to fight Luke Rockhold at UFC Fight Night Australia in Perth. Okay, or no, this is UFC 221. Sorry, but he gets to fight Luke Rockhold, knocks Luke Rockhold out, and so he said what he came up to Luke Rockhold to say. He said is, I love you, God is great, but what about all that talk you were saying? And he said, I gave him the kiss of Judas.
Oh,
that's what he said, man.
I was not anticipating.
You were not anticipating that. That's why this is on the show. That's why we're talking about this.
That is a gangster move.
Okay, now, if you go back and watch the video, right, Luke Rockhold has his arms stretched out on the cage, like in crucifix position. And so for him to give him that kiss on the cheek, it is so good. Like,
yo, mad respect.
Hold on, wait a minute. We got to do this. We got to do this.
Hype train.
Casey, are you on that Yoel Romero hype train?
Well, I'm not just on it. I'm the conductor at this point. Are you kidding me? Like, to be honest, I was on our Facebook page. I had that poll, and I was the one who picked Luke Rockhold to win. But I just really didn't know about Romero's tank. But man, that dude is a beast, and he's a savage.
Oh my gosh! Well, if you are the conductor, then dang it, I'm running the ticket booth. That
Yoel is just, he's a great fighter and an amazing salsa dancer. Did you see that in his open workouts? He taught a salsa class. That was kind of
No way.
strange, a little different, but I like it because the whole thing's a spectacle anyway. Like, these guys, I mean, the open workouts are fun-ish.
Yeah.
But for him to just have fun with it, like, that was, I like this guy. He's easy to like.
Yeah. All right. Somebody set a new record. Conor McGregor set a new record.
When you first said that, threw me off. But what is this record?
Conor McGregor now holds the record for the longest champion streak without a title defense. And it was yesterday he broke the record at 463 days. He is now at 464 days. And I expect him to go for quite some time.
And this, there's so many things wrong with that picture. First of all, Dana White, why don't you just officially strip this man? It's really not that hard. People are frustrated. He's quickly joining the conversation of the least loved champions out there. I mean, Woodley gets a lot of pushback because people feel like hurry up and just fight someone now, because Woodley is, of course, kind of sitting back looking for a money fight because he's never going to touch that Conor level money. Mm-hmm. But Conor's setting a heck of a precedence. Like, he's changed the game, and thus he does what he wants. And Dana White just sitting back and coddling him at this point, not a good look for the UFC.
Agreed. I mean, we want to see these people fight. They're the best. Go fight. If you're not going to fight, give up the belt. That's it. Defend or vacate. #.
Yeah, Conor is, at this point, he's ruined his chances at being the people's champ, I think. Like, of course, he's still going to have his diehard fans who believe that Conor is untouchable. But we've seen throughout the years, Conor has many holes in his game. And it's not like people aren't getting better and improving. So Conor coming back at this point, like, he should just go ahead and give it up, because too many people have caught up to his skill level. Too many people know his fun striking techniques and coming from different angles. Like, yeah, that's cool and all, but you've got people out there who will destroy Conor. I think the Khabib fight would be interesting. I think Ferguson, like, he's got some opportunities to come back, but he knows it's too dangerous. So just make it official, man. You're not coming back.
All right. Speaking of coming back, Chuck Liddell, 48 years old, wants to come back in the cage, not the octagon, because they don't want it back there.
Yeah, but I feel like that has to be a Bellator Senior League moment.
He's talking about coming back to Bellator, and he's got 2 names on his list that he'd like to see in the Bellator cage. Do you know who they are?
Please let Dana White be one of them.
One of them is not Dana White, which would be just the biggest mind screw ever. The president
for
of
Dana
UFC
White to fight in Bellator
against Chuck Liddell. 2 names on the list. Care to wager?
Not the foggiest, man.
Okay. Well, the first one, he's fought this dude 3 times, won 2 of them. But this guy is too busy being the manager for Chris Cyborg.
Floyd Mayweather.
Tito Ortiz.
We both know I had no idea what the answer was.
All right. Here, the other guy, the other name on the list. You're going to get this one. Here's the clue. He is the American Gangster.
Oh, the Iceman, Chuck Liddell.
Who is he going to fight? The American Gangster from the mean streaks of Bend, Oregon.
Oh, yeah. That's Anderson Silva.
Let's try the guy who out-wrestled Rampage Jackson.
Cahill Sonnen. Cahill Sonnen.
Yes, it's Michael Sonnen without the my.
Oh, so Cahill.
Yeah. Chael Sonnen. So Chael Sonnen, Tito Ortiz are the people that Chuck Liddell would love to get back into the cage and fight one more time. I don't think it's going to happen. I pray that Bellator.
I don't think anyone wants to see that.
No one wants to see that. And frankly, I think Chael Sonnen makes a bloody mark in the ring with Chuck Liddell.
Oh, for sure.
And
I mean, as long as both are allowed to take TRT, then yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, then it's even worse. But speaking of making a bloody mark in the ring with someone, Kamaru Usman, he's still calling out Colby Covington.
I love this move for Kamaru Usman because he needs to fight some top talent here. And the reality is he does pose a legitimate threat to Colby Covington. Colby Covington has conspicuously been very quiet on this. Part of this might be the fact that Colby sits currently right now as the number 3 ranked guy. And he's continually pestering Tyron for a fight. I personally don't see that happening anytime soon because the money is just not there. But this is a great move. I mean, I personally think that this is Colby just sitting back, waiting for some magic to happen that he'll get a title shot. But the reality is that Colby is losing a lot of fans because his antics. He wants to be Conor McGregor so bad. Like in all of his interviews, people will ask him, hey, what do you think about this guy or this guy coming up in the division? And he pretends to not know anyone except for Tyron Woodley. And that's a ridiculous notion. So Usman coming out and making a case directly to Dana White for why this should happen, saying make this fight happen in the next 2 months or I will never give this guy a shot. That's a bold statement from Usman. But calling your shot like that is exactly what this division is calling for. It's everyone has to go big or go home to make this division interesting, and I personally would love to see that fight.
So do you think Kamaru Usman could win with only 80%, or do you think he'd give a full 100% on this one?
I feel like if he gave a 30% effort, he would 100% of the time do better than Colby Covington at 140%.
Wow.
Math.
Math. It's what's for dinner. All right. So I want to do this. You and I have talked a lot about, the challenges that the UFC is facing as it goes into the future, and so I thought that maybe I would give you just a few minutes to go into a heavy bag and talk about your thoughts on the current state of the UFC.
The Heavy Bag.
All right, this is the Heavy Bag. This is where we focus on a topic and give it all we got until we've exhausted it. So there you go. You have the floor, Mr. KC.
It's kind of short and sweet for me just because this is an argument that I have almost daily on Twitter and Instagram as people are constantly complaining about fighters and how come Tyron Woodley won't defend, and what about this fighter, and everyone wants to talk about Conor McGregor. And I think, honestly, as much as Conor McGregor has changed the game, he's also damaged the UFC considerably. So what we have now is, let me, for the record, say that I am still a UFC fan. I love MMA as a whole, and I think that UFC could do better. So it's a critique on where it could get better versus just saying, hey, this is a garbage promotion. And the fact is that the UFC is now at a point where they've gotten way too hungry on these super fights. Like each division, every champion has to now, it's rumored that Amanda Nunes would fight Cyborg, and then that fight falls apart. And then we've got all of these other...
226 in July.
All right, well, there you have it.
Sorry.
No, you're good because there's been so much fluctuation as far as people calling out Cyborg saying, hey, this fight should have happened with someone else. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that because the fact that we're having so many super fights is really a cover-up of the fact that we've got a lack of investment from the UFC in the divisions themselves. So that investment comes in fighter training and preparedness, but that also comes in its marketing resources. So when we have fighters like Tyron Woodley, who is a champion, who has earned his spot, he's had a long run within the UFC to get to the champion spot, and people are saying, well, he's not a likable champ. Well, the number one job of the promotion is to promote their fighters. And if you can't come up with a compelling story for a man who's had such a long run within the UFC, then what are you doing as a marketing team? Like, you're clearly not the top of the business. Then you need a whole new marketing team to come in there and figure out how do you make a narrative that he's either the villain or a really good family guy who supports a lot of his St. Louis community. He loves gaming. He's a NASCAR fan. He's out at all of these events. Like, there's some stories to tell that would make Woodley a likable champ, and yet the UFC would rather spend its money promoting the look. So we've got people like Sage Northcutt, who barely wins his fights, and yet the UFC just loves this kid. Like, the guy can't even blink like a normal person in his interviews. It is really weird to watch this, and yet we're going to spend all of our money on a guy like this who's unproven versus champions who aren't getting, like Amanda Nunes. Why is her only money shot going to fight Cyborg? So the reality is that you have to build divisions where you're spending money on the fighters and allowing us to actually care about some of these undercards. Like, the undercard should matter. Like, we should know these fighters, but most of us kind of skip past the undercard because they're just a bunch of no names and we don't get to hear their stories and why this fight is compelling. UFC just has to do better. That's where I'm at. And so I know I get a lot of hate on this, but just to clarify, I love the UFC. Your marketing sucks and your promoting needs to be better.
All right. Well, there you have it. That has been the Heavy Bag. KC going in on the UFC. Do better. That's one of your phrases too. Do better. All right. Well, this show wouldn't be complete if we didn't look forward at next week's, or I guess this weekend's fights. They're going to be in Orlando. So let's look at the fight card.
Fight card.
All right. UFC Fight Night is coming to Orlando, Florida this Saturday. And, like I said before, and well put in the Heavy Bag too, that a lot of these fights, we don't know these fighters, and so we don't care as much because we don't know their stories and we don't see how their fight has any impact on the landscape of their respective divisions. Right. The headline of this fight is Jeremy Little Heathen Stevens, coming off of quick work of the Korean Superboy, Do-Ho Choi, and he's fighting Josh Emmett. This is a fight up in the division, so this is going to be a good fight. I'm actually looking forward to that one.
Yeah, Little Heathen looks so good that this for sure is going to be a very interesting matchup. And yeah, I think stylistically these two will match up quite well to make it for a great headline, like for real.
All right. Also on the card, Tisha Torres, the Tiny Tornado. She's fighting Jessica Andrade. This is actually a really good fight.
2 versus a 5.
Yeah, I mean that's
also implications here. I like it.
That one is going to definitely look at who Joanna Jędrzejczyk's going to have to fight next.
Interesting.
Yeah, because after she gets her title back, she's going to have to defend it.
I was wondering. I was like, I'm 100% sure that she's gonna lose, but okay.
All right. So, who else is on this card? Vince St. Preux, OSP, my fraternity brother.
The slow starter himself.
Yeah, he's against Ilir Latifi. I don't think this fight's going to go fast. So this plays well for Vince St. Preux. Maybe he can get another one of those Von Fluke chokes. Platinum Mike Perry. He's on the card.
That's not too shabby.
Not too shabby. This is going to be a good card. So,
but I think something that you'd want to pay for?
Oh, it's free. It's on Fox.
It's a free fight, but this kind of goes back to my heavy bag notion of like these fights are. This is probably a little bit better of the free cards, but shouldn't we care more? Like, shouldn't this be something that we are willing to pay for?
Potentially. This is a card that should be a main card of a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I personally,
because even the Fox prelims, there's a couple interesting ones. Some that you just love to hate. Like for you, I don't think you're a big fan of Jackie Hill.
Angela.
Ah, dang it! Jackie Hill is the rapper.
Yeah, Angela Hill. By the way, she is on the run sheet. I was going to comment on the fact that I've never seen Angela Hill win a fight. How is she still in the UFC? Like, I know she has won fights. My eyes just haven't seen them. Like, I got to go back on UFC Fight Pass just to watch fights where she's won. And I'm pretty sure that the moment I download it, she will lose that fight too.
Was she in that? What is that? The Ultimate Fighter?
Yes.
So maybe that's where she won fights.
She won the fight to get into the house, right? But I didn't see that episode. And then I saw the next episode and she lost that fight. I watched the finale and she lost that fight. And I started making jokes about it on Twitter, and people were like giving me hate mail, like, she's on like a 4-fight win streak. I'm like, I have said I've never seen her win. I didn't say that she doesn't win. I'm just saying I've never seen it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I haven't seen that either.
So I'm picking her opponent because I plan on watching this card, and I don't think I'm going to see her win. I don't even know this lady.
That is terrible. What about another interesting one in the prelims is Renan Barão?
Yes. I should start sending you the run sheet. That might be useful to you. But I had him also on the list, Renan Barão, because Renan Barão was the bantamweight champion. I mean, this dude looked like he was going to be unstoppable. He was approaching Anderson Silva level defenses. Oh my gosh, this guy is unbeatable. And then he just got stopped, and he's fallen from grace. He is this guy used to headline pay-per-views, and now he is a prelim on a free card.
Right? That is an absolute fall from grace here. I mean, the guy is unranked and fighting another unranked fighter. This is hopefully a turnaround moment for Renan, because he had some flashes of greatness, and sometimes it just takes one good fight to start you back on that path.
Absolutely, and he is one of those fighters that, as you were talking about in the heavy bag, that we should care about. He is not great on the mic. He cannot sell himself. He is a Brazilian fighter who struggles with his English. I mean, it's not bad, but he still struggles. So people just never really liked him. Like, he never got that level of following that a champion who's defended as many times as he had at the time should have gotten. He was a relatively a no-name fighter holding the belt and defending something like 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, it's crazy, and maybe that speaks to a change in the mindset that the UFC has to have, that yes, we are a very English-focused sport, but you're global in nature, and you've got to find a way to make some of these international stars available internationally and not just in their home country.
Absolutely.
Overall, I still think this will be a great card, start to finish, something well worth watching, with some potentials for some nasty finishes and some long drawn out just dogfights. So overall, I'm looking forward to this one.
All right, well, I'm going to go light a candle for Angela Hill. Maybe she will win a fight for once that I can see and credit. Like, if she wins next week, we'll be talking about. I'm like, that's going to be the first thing. Angela Hill won a dang fight. All right. Well, follow us on social media. On Twitter, I'm at CST Ryan.
And I am at CST_ the letter K and the letter C.
You can check out the website at www.combatsportstalk.com. And you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Facebook. Please like our page, and Instagram.
Instagram.
By the way, my Instagram is at Combat Sports Talk. What's yours?
I am at Push Pull Pray.
All righty then. Our theme music is composed by Scott McCurry at scottdeancountry.com.
Casey Onyebuchi produced our lead-ins. I want to thank you for joining us for another edition of Combat Sports Talk. For Casey Onyebuchi, I'm Ryan Smith, reminding you to keep your hands up, your chin tucked, and throw bombs.